Their wealthy young man left his wife and his black son due to an invented betrayal. Years later, he fights to get them back and face parental rejection. The Johnson mansion, located in the most exclusive area of the city, was synonymous with opulence and power. Inside this lavish residence, the young James Johnson lived surrounded by luxury. His father, Rick Johnson, was an influential tycoon known for his racial prejudices and rigid worldview. James, however, had never shared his father's values. From an early age, James had felt trapped in a life he did not choose. The expectations of his family, the constant pressure to follow in his father's footsteps, and the superficiality of his environment had led him to question his purpose. Although he had everything materially he could want, James felt an inner emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. One night, after a formal dinner at which his father boasted of his accomplishments and despised those he considered inferior, James could no longer contain his frustration. In a fit of bravery, he confronted Rick in the mansion's study. "Dad, I can't continue living like this. I don't share your values or your way of seeing the world." "I want to find my own path," James said, with a firmness that surprised his father. Rick, furious, looked at him with disdain. "Live like this? Everything you have is thanks to me. You are ungrateful, James." "If you leave through that door, forget about coming back," Rick responded, his voice full of anger. Determined not to back down, James grabbed a backpack with some belongings and headed to the door. "I would rather live with dignity and find my own path than remain in a golden cage," he said, before leaving the mansion. James found himself in a humble neighborhood, very different from the environment in which he had grown up. There, while he was wandering the streets, he came across a young woman who caught his attention. Natalia was sitting in a modest cafeteria, working on her laptop and taking notes. Her simple appearance and her concentrated gaze aroused James's curiosity. Pushed by impulse, he entered the cafeteria and sat at a nearby table. While he waited for her coffee, he watched as Natalia interacted with the waiter, displaying a kindness and warmth that he found refreshing. "Hello, I'm James," he said, timidly approaching their table. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Natalia looked at him surprised, but she smiled. "Sure, sit down." "I'm Natalia," she responded, closing her computer. James and Natalia began to talk. He told him about her decision to leave home and her search for purpose, while she told him about her own dreams and the struggles she faced daily. As the conversation progressed, James felt more and more attracted to Natalia's authenticity and strength. "It seems like we're both looking for our place in the world," James said, smiling for the first time in a long time. "Yes, and sometimes finding it means leaving behind what we knew," Natalia responded, looking at him with understanding. Thus began a connection that would change James's life forever, marking the beginning of a story full of love, challenges, and redemption. The connection between James and Natalia strengthened quickly. They both shared a genuine curiosity about each other's experiences and perspectives, which caused their encounters to become more frequent and meaningful. James, who had always lived surrounded by superficiality, found a refreshing authenticity in Natalia. As the days passed, James immersed himself in Natalia's world, a world very different from his own. They walked through the streets of the humble neighborhood, visited local markets, and shared simple meals, but full of flavor and love. Natalia showed James how life could be rich in experiences and emotions, without the need for luxuries. One afternoon, while they were walking through a nearby park, James opened up more about his past life and the reasons that led him to run away from home. "I grew up with everything someone could want materially, but I always felt empty," James confessed, looking Natalia in the eyes. "My father controls every aspect of my life, and I have never had the freedom to be who I really am." Natalia listened to him carefully, understanding the weight that James carried on her shoulders. "Sometimes finding your true path means challenging everything you knew," she said, with a softness that touched James's heart. "I have also had to fight for what I want, but that has made me stronger." James's admiration for Natalia grew with each day. He not only admired her strength and determination, but also her ability to find joy in the little things. Natalia, for her part, found in James a genuine and sensitive man who was willing to fight for a purpose greater than himself. Their love blossomed amid these shared experiences, and it wasn't long before James and Natalia realized the depth of their feelings. However, They were also aware of the obstacles they faced due to their very different worlds. One night, while they were having dinner at a small local restaurant, James took Natalia's hand and spoke to her from his heart. "Natalia, I know we come from different worlds, but I have never felt something as real and deep as what I feel for you. I want to be with you, no matter the obstacles." Natalia looked at him with tears in her eyes, moved by her words. "James, I love you too. I know it won't be easy, but together we can face whatever comes," she responded, sealing her promise with a tender kiss. Thus, their relationship was consolidated in the midst of adversity. Despite the early social obstacles and racial prejudices they faced, James and Natalia were determined to fight for their love. However, they knew that the real challenges were still to come. The differences between their worlds would not easily fade, and the weight of family and social expectations would remain a constant threat to their happiness. But for now, they enjoyed every moment together, strengthening their bond and preparing for the trials they knew they would inevitably face. Their love, although still young, had become a powerful and resilient force, ready to face any adversity that life threw at them. James and Natalia's love was blossoming strongly, but their different worlds were beginning to put pressure on their relationship. While James integrated into Natalia's simple and warm life, his absence in the Johnson home did not go unnoticed. Rick, enraged and disconcerted by his son's decision, decided to take matters into his own hands. One morning, while James and Natalia were enjoying a walk through the local market, Rick learned of his whereabouts from one of his employees. Determined to get his son back and eliminate what he considered a bad influence, Rick planned his next move. That same afternoon, when James returned to Natalia's modest apartment, he found his father waiting for him. Rick was sitting on the small sofa, his face a mixture of fury and determination. "Dad, what are you doing here?" James asked, surprised and worried. "I'm here to take you back home where you belong," Rick replied coldly. "This life is not for you, James. You have responsibilities that you cannot avoid." James felt how anger mixed with fear inside him. He knew that facing his father wouldn't be easy. "Dad, I already told you, this is my life now. I don't want to go back to that golden cage." "This is where I feel happy and free," he replied firmly. Rick looked at him with disdain. Happy? With this girl? You haven't realized what you're doing. You are throwing your future overboard for a passing illusion. That young woman is not suitable for you or our family." Rick's words hurt James deeply, but he stood firm. "You can't decide for me, Dad. I choose my own path, and Natalia is part of it. I'm not going to leave her." The argument intensified until Rick, in a last attempt to control his son, played his strongest card. "If you don't come home right now, James, forget about your inheritance. Forget everything I have built for you. You will be alone, without my support," Rick threatened, with a harshness that froze the atmosphere. James felt that his world was shaking. The pressure of his father's words was immense, but he could not betray his own feelings. After a long silence, he looked at his father with determination. "I prefer to be poor and happy with Natalia than to live a life of luxury and emptiness with you. If this means being alone, so be it," James said with a firm voice, even though his insides trembled. Rick stood up, his face red with fury. "Very good, James, you have decided. Don't look for me when you need help because I won't be there," he snapped, before leaving the apartment, slamming the door shut. James fell onto the couch, feeling both liberated and devastated. Natalia, who had been listening from the kitchen, came over and hugged him. "I'm sorry, James. I didn't want this to happen," she said with tears in her eyes. "It's not your fault, Natalia. It was inevitable. My father will never understand what true love is." "But I won't let her separate us," James responded, holding her tightly. The following days were difficult. James had to face the reality of living without the financial support of his family. Although Natalia supported him unconditionally, the financial and emotional pressures were beginning to take their toll on him. One afternoon, while James was working in a mechanical workshop to earn some money, Kim, an ambitious and manipulative woman, appeared in his life. Kim was an acquaintance of the Johnson family, and she had been introduced to James on several social occasions. She had heard about James's situation and decided to take advantage. "I know your vulnerability." "Hi, James." "I didn't expect to find you here," Kim said with a charming smile when she entered the workshop. James, covered in grease and sweat, looked up in surprise. "Kim, what are you doing here?" he asked, drying his hands with a cloth. "I was just passing through and thought I'd say hello." "I heard things have changed for you," she replied, moving closer. "Maybe I can help you." Kim, with her cunning and charm, began to weave a web around James. She offered him financial and emotional support, making him believe that she was on her side. Although Paul was cautious, the pressure of her circumstances led him to accept her help. Meanwhile, Kim had a secret relationship with Tony, her lover and her accomplice. Together, they hatched a plan to permanently separate James from Natalia and ensure her control over him and his fortune. "We need to make James think that Natalia has betrayed him. Only then will he stay away from her forever," Kim told Tony in one of her secret meetings. "Okay. We are going to create situations that make James doubt his loyalty," Tony responded with a perverse smile. James and Natalia's days of happiness would soon be disturbed by the machinations of Kim and Tony. Manipulation and misunderstandings were about to test their love in the most painful way possible. Life in the machine shop offered James a sense of purpose, even though it was nothing like the life of luxury he had known. Kim, meanwhile, continued her subtle invasion of James's life. Her presence became more frequent, and her help more indispensable. One day, while James was working in the workshop, Kim arrived with a proposal. "James, I know you don't want to depend on anyone, but I have a job offer that might interest you. It's a position in one of my family's companies. It's not charity, it's an opportunity for you to prove your worth," Kim said with a charming smile. Paul, exhausted and worried about his finances, considered the offer. He knew that accepting could mean greater stability, something that would also benefit Natalia and her future child. "It's okay, Kim, I'll take the job, but I want you to know that I don't do it out of charity, but because I need an opportunity to get ahead," James responded, determined. Kim smiled, satisfied that she had taken the first step towards bringing him closer to her trap. Meanwhile, Tony, Kim's lover and accomplice, remained in the shadows, but his influence was palpable. Tony was a cunning and manipulative man, and together he and Kim made a formidable couple in their mission to separate James and Natalia. Kim and Tony began to meticulously plan each move. They knew that for their plan to work, they had to plant doubts in James's mind about Natalia's loyalty. They used every resource at her disposal to create situations that would lead James to question the fidelity of his beloved. One night, Kim invited James to dinner at an elegant restaurant to discuss the details of the new job. The evening was carefully planned. Kim knew exactly how to gain James's trust, and his performance was impeccable. "James, I'm really happy that you accepted my offer. I know this can be a new beginning for you," Kim said, looking into his eyes with apparent sincerity. "Thank you, Kim. I appreciate your help, but I want to make it clear that my heart belongs to Natalia." "She is my everything," James responded firmly. Kim smiled, but deep inside her, the determination to separate James from Natalia was strengthening. "I understand, James. I only want the best for you," she said, raising her glass in a toast. Meanwhile, Tony worked behind the scenes, creating scenarios that would make Natalia appear unfaithful. He began to follow her, photographing her in compromising moments and fabricating false evidence that he would later hand over to Kim so that she could use it at the right moment. A week later, Kim orchestrated a chance encounter in which James would see Natalia talking to an old college friend, a man Kim had hired to appear to be her secret lover. Kim and Tony made sure James was in the right place at the right time to witness the scene. "What are you doing here, Natalia?" James asked, his voice full of disbelief and pain when he saw Natalia with the man. "James, this is not what it seems. He's just an old friend," Natalia tried to explain, surprised by the accusation. But doubts were already planted in Paul's mind. Kim and Tony made sure to fuel those doubts with more false evidence and carefully fabricated misunderstandings. Every time Natalia tried to explain the situation, James found more evidence of her supposed infidelity. James began to distance himself emotionally from Natalia and their relationship. Who was once so strong and full of love, began to crumble under the weight of lies. Kim took every opportunity to comfort James, pretending to be an understanding friend. "James, I'm here for you. I know this is difficult, but you have to keep going, Kim said, hugging him as he fought back tears. I can't believe Natalia betrayed me like that. I thought our love was different, James responded, his voice broken by pain. Finally, the accumulation of misunderstandings and manipulations reached a critical point. In a confrontation full of emotions, James accused Natalia of betrayal, unable to see the truth behind Kim and Tony's lies. I can't continue like this, Natalia. I can't trust you, James said, heartbroken. James, please listen. This is all a lie. I love you, Natalia implored, with tears in her eyes. But Paul, blinded by the manipulations, could not see beyond what he believed to be the truth. I'm sorry, Natalia. This is over, he finally said, walking away from her. Heartbroken and feeling betrayed, James returned to his home, leaving Natalia behind. In his desperation and confusion, he agreed to marry Kim, thinking that perhaps she would be the comfort he needed to forget his pain. Kim and Tony had achieved their goal. Natalia was alone, and James, without knowing it, was more trapped than ever in the web of lies woven by his manipulators. The real challenges for James and Natalia were just beginning, and their paths would cross again in ways neither of them could foresee. Meanwhile, one month Natalia discovered that she was pregnant with James. Determined to raise her son alone, she began planning for her future without him. Despite her pain and betrayal, Natalia found strength in her love for the baby she carried in her womb. Months passed, and Kim and Tony continued to manipulate James, ensuring that he had no reason to return to Natalia. However, fate had other plans for them. As time progressed, James began to see cracks in Kim's facade, and the lies that had separated him from Natalia began to crumble. True love and truth always find a way to prevail, and although James and Natalia were separated, their paths were destined to cross once again. The news of Natalia's pregnancy fell like a bolt of lightning in the middle of the emotional storm she was experiencing. The young woman, although devastated by her breakup with James, found a new reason to fight. Her son would be her strength and her hope. She decided not to inform James about her condition, convinced that he was too influenced by Kim and Tony's lies. As the months passed, Natalia faced the difficulties of being a single mother. Her pregnancy was complicated, not only physically but also emotionally, as she dealt with loneliness and social rejection. The community in which she lived was for the most part supportive, but there were always those who looked at her with disdain and judgment. However, Natalia did not let herself be intimidated. The day of Trevor's birth was a bittersweet moment. As she held her child for the first time, a mixture of deep love and sadness washed over her. Trevor was the spitting image of her father, with his dark, expressive eyes, and every time she looked at him, Natalia felt both love and pain. Meanwhile, James's life with Kim was a farce full of unhappiness. Kim, initially caring and understanding, soon showed her true manipulative and selfish nature. James, although grateful for the financial stability that Kim offered him, could not ignore the emotional emptiness he felt. The nights were lonely and cold, and with each passing day, his thoughts turned more toward Natalia and what they had shared. James tried to concentrate on his work in Kim's family's company, but the monotony and lack of passion suffocated him. Kim, for her part, felt triumphant at having trapped James, but her true nature made her demanding and controlling. Arguments were frequent, and James realized that he had fallen into a trap from which he did not know how to escape. One day, while James was in the office, he found an old photo of him and Natalia on his phone. The image transported him to happier times, and nostalgia invaded him. He decided to visit some of the places they used to frequent together, looking for something that could fill the void he felt. While James dealt with her unhappiness, Natalia focused on building a life for herself and her son. She got a stable job and began studying at night, determined to offer Trevor a better future. The community supported her at all times, admiring her strength and determination. Trevor grew up surrounded by love and care, and Natalia felt increasingly proud of her father. Little one afternoon, while she was walking through the park with Trevor, Natalia ran into an old friend of hers, Rosa, who had not seen her in a long time. "Natalie, long time no see you," Rosa exclaimed, hugging her. "Who is this little guy?" "This is Trevor, my son," Natalia responded, smiling. A lot has changed since we last saw each other." Rosa stared at the boy, instantly recognizing James's features in him. "He's just like his father," she murmured, with a mixture of surprise and sadness. Natalia nodded, aware of the weight of those words. "Yes, it is, but Paul doesn't know. I didn't want to involve him in this part of my life. He's with Kim now, and he didn't want to complicate things further," she explained. Rosa, always supportive of her, offered her unconditional support and promised to help her in any way she could. Natalia thanked her for her gesture, feeling strengthened by the renewed friendship. Meanwhile, in Kim and James's home, tensions reached their peak. Kim, increasingly demanding and controlling, began to show her disdain for the community where Natalia came from and for everything she represented. James, increasingly aware of Kim's manipulations, began to investigate the circumstances that had led him to separate from Natalia. One night, after a particularly bitter argument with Kim, James decided to visit an old friend who had worked in the mechanic's shop. There, in the middle of a sincere conversation, James discovered that Tony had been following Natalia and fabricating evidence of her betrayal. "I never believed those stories about Natalia. She always seemed like a good person to me. And now that you mention it, I remember seeing Tony hanging around the workshop several times," said his friend, confirming James's suspicions. The revelation was a devastating blow. James realized that he had been manipulated by Kim and Tony, and that his breakup with Natalia had been based on lies. Full of remorse, he decided it was time to face the truth and seek out Natalia to ask for forgiveness and claim her place in her son's life. Returning home that night, James confronted Kim with what he had discovered. "Kim, I know the truth. I know that you and Tony manipulated me to get away from Natalia. I can't continue living this lie," he said, shouting very loudly. Kim, surprised but still defiant, tried to defend herself against her. "James, everything I did was for our good. Natalia is not right for you and—" "Shut your mouth!" James responded, furious at the events. "This lie ends today, and I promise you that you and the other Scorpions who manipulated me will pay dearly." Kim was left with a shocked face, knowing that her lie had collapsed to pieces. She needed time to reflect on what she would do next. The road to redemption would not be easy, but Paul was willing to face it. True love and truth always find a way to prevail, and although the future was uncertain, James knew that he must fight for what really mattered. James left Kim's house with a mixture of determination and fear. Every step he took brought him closer to Natalia and the son he didn't know he had. As he drove through the streets of the city, memories of his time with Natalia flooded over him, and the pain of the unfair separation grew more acute. He knew that facing her wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to do it. Natalia, for her part, was facing her own struggles. Although she had found support in her community, her life as a single mother was difficult. She worked long hours at a grocery store, and at night she studied to improve her job opportunities. Her love for Trevor was her greatest motivation, and every smile from her son gave her the strength to move forward. One afternoon, as Natalia returned home after a long day at work, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. She couldn't explain it, but something in the air told her that her life was about to change. When she opened the door to her apartment, she found James waiting on the threshold. "Natalia," he said, his voice trembling, his eyes full of emotion and regret. Natalia was paralyzed, unable to believe what she saw. The man she had loved and who had left her was there, in front of her, after all this time. "James, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice filled with a mix of surprise and distrust. "I need to talk with you. There are so many things you don't know, so many lies that came between us." "Please, let me explain," James begged, his eyes searching Natalia's desperately. Natalia, still stunned, stepped back and allowed James to enter. Once inside her, she closed the door behind him and prepared to listen to what she had to say. "Natalia, everything that happened, everything that made you think that I betrayed you, was a lie. Kim and Tony manipulated us to separate us. I didn't know anything. I was a fool to believe them, but now I know the truth," James said, his words full of sincerity and pain. Natalia listened in silence, her heart pounding. James's every word resonated with the truth that she had known in her heart, but that she had been buried by pain and betrayal. "James, I don't know if I can trust you again. What happened destroyed us both, and I don't know if I can let you back into my life," she responded, her eyes filling with tears. At that moment, Trevor left his room, attracted by the voices. Seeing James, she ran towards him with an innocent smile on his face. "Mom, who is this man?" Trevor asked with the curiosity of a small child. James gasped when he saw the boy. Trevor's eyes were a reflection of his, and in that moment he knew she was his son. Tears began to roll down his cheeks as he crouched down to the boy's level. "Hello, champion." I'm a friend of your mother," James said, his voice breaking. Natalia watched the scene, her heart divided between pain and hope. She knew that James had the right to know her son, but she also feared the impact this could have on her life. During the following weeks, James tried to gain the trust of Natalia and Trevor. He strove to be a constant and reliable presence, helping in any way he could and showing genuine love for his son. Little by little, Natalia began to open up, allowing James to return to her life, although cautiously. However, the shadows of Kim and Tony continued to lurk. Kim, furious at having lost James, decided that she would stop at nothing to get him back. Along with Tony, she planned a series of attacks aimed at destabilizing Natalia and regaining control over James. One night, while Natalia and Trevor were sleeping, someone knocked loudly on the door of her apartment. Upon opening, Natalia found herself face to face with Kim, whose eyes flashed with rage. "Natalia, you and that child don't deserve James. I'll do everything I can to separate them again," Kim said, her voice filled with venom from her. Natalia, scared but determined, faced Kim. "I'm not afraid of you, Kim. James has chosen to be with his family, and I will not allow you to destroy us again," she responded firmly. Kim left, but Natalia knew that the danger had not passed. She decided to go to James and tell him what happened. James, upon hearing about the confrontation, decided to take measures to protect his family. "I won't let Kim hurt us again. Let's go to the police and let's make sure she pays for what she's done," James said, taking Natalia by the hand with determination. The complaint against Kim and Tony marked the beginning of a legal battle that promised to be long and complicated. However, with the support of the community and the determination of James and Natalia, they knew they could face it together. The days that followed were intense, full of hearings and testimonies. James and Natalia supported each other, their love growing stronger with each challenge overcome. Kim and Tony, cornered by evidence and witness testimony, began to see their world fall apart. Ultimately, justice prevailed. Kim and Tony were convicted of their crimes, and the threat they posed faded. James, Natalia, and Trevor could breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that the danger had passed. The road to redemption had been arduous and full of obstacles, but love and truth had triumphed. James and Natalia, now closer than ever, began to build a future full of hope and love for themselves and their son. As they looked out over the horizon, they knew that together they could face any challenge life threw at them, because they had learned that true love always prevails. While Natalia and Trevor adjusted to their new life without the threat of Kim and Tony, James continued to deal with the remnants of his unhappy marriage. Although he now had the opportunity to be with his real family, the emotional damage Kim had inflicted continued to affect him. In the house he once shared with Kim, the atmosphere was heavy and full of painful memories. Every corner of the house reminded him of the moments of manipulation and lies that had distanced him from Natalia. He decided to move to a more modest and welcoming place where he could start over with Natalia and Trevor. The new house, although small, was full of hope and new opportunities. James began working on rebuilding his relationship with Natalia and establishing a solid connection with Trevor. They spent a lot of time together, sharing family activities and rediscovering the joy of being together. Trevor, with his innocence and joy, was the glue that held everything together. James strove to be a present and loving father, and each day he felt more grateful for the second chance he had been given. However, Kim's shadow was still present in his mind. He would wake up with nightmares, reliving the moments of betrayal and manipulation. The weight of guilt and regret was overwhelming, and although Natalia tried to comfort him, she knew that James needed time to heal. One night, while James was sitting in the living room lost in her thoughts, Natalia came and sat next to her. "James, I know this has been difficult for you, but I want you to know that I am here, and that together we can overcome anything," Natalia said, taking her hand tenderly. James looked at her, his eyes full of gratitude and love. "Thank you, Natalia. I don't know what she would do without you, but I need to find a way to leave the past behind and focus on our future," James responded, determination in his voice. He decided to seek professional help to deal with his trauma and emotions. He began attending therapy sessions where he was able to talk openly about his feelings and receive the support he needed to heal. Little by little, he began to feel that the nightmares were fading and that she could breathe more easily. While James worked on his recovery, Kim continued trying to interfere in her lives. Despite her condemnation, she used any opportunity to send messages of hate and revenge to James. She knew this was part of her tactic to keep him under her emotional control, but James was determined not to let it affect him. One day, while he was checking his mail, he found a letter from Kim. He hesitated for a moment, but decided to open it. The letter was full of threats and promises of revenge, but this time, instead of feeling afraid, Paul felt sorry for her. Kim was trapped in her own hell of hatred and manipulation, unable to find peace. "I can't allow Kim to continue affecting our lives, Natalia. She is full of hate, but we have something stronger: love and truth." "We will not let it destroy us," James said, tearing the letter and throwing it into the trash. Natalia nodded, supporting him in his decision. "You're right, James. We are in this together, and nothing and no one can separate us again," she responded, hugging him tightly. Meanwhile, Rick, James's father, was also going through a reflection process. He had seen how his prejudices and destructive attitudes had alienated his son and almost destroyed his life. He decided to visit Paul and talk to him, hoping to right his wrongs. One afternoon, Rick arrived at James's new house. He knocked on the door with a mix of nervousness and regret. When James opened the door and saw his father, his first reaction was surprise, followed by caution. "Dad, what are you doing here?" James asked, keeping the door ajar. "James, I know I haven't been the best father. I have made many mistakes, and I have let my prejudices keep you from your true happiness. I'm here to ask for forgiveness and to tell you that I want to change," Rick said, with sincerity in his voice. James was silent for a moment, processing his father's words. Finally, he decided to give it a try. "Okay, Dad. Happens." "Let's talk," he responded, opening the door completely. Rick entered and saw Natalia and Trevor in the living room. He felt ashamed for the way he had treated Natalia and for all the pain he had caused. He approached Natalia with a regretful expression. "Natalia, I want to apologize for all the harm I have caused you. There are no excuses for my behavior, and I deeply regret what I did," Rick said, his voice shaking. Natalia, although surprised by Rick's presence, decided to give him a chance. "I appreciate your words, Rick. We all make mistakes, and the important thing is to learn from them and change. I hope you can find peace and reconciliation," he responded with a kind smile. Over time, Rick began to be part of the lives of James, Natalia, and Trevor. He worked hard to show that he had changed, and little by little his relationship with his son was repaired. Although the road to redemption was long and difficult, Rick was determined to be a better person and a better grandfather to Trevor. James, Natalia, and Trevor found a new normal, full of love, support, and hope. They had overcome enormous challenges, and although they knew there was still work to do, they were prepared to face it together. The future, although uncertain, looked brighter with each passing day. The sun was setting behind the horizon, leaving a golden glow on James's modest house. Although Kim and Tony's threat had been neutralized, a new shadow loomed over them. James knew that, to close this dark chapter of his life, he had to face his greatest enemy, his own father, Rick. Ever since Rick had attempted to reconcile with James, he had been a frequent visitor to his home. However, his presence always generated a palpable tension. Natalia, although willing to give him a chance, had never let go of her distrust. There was something in the way Rick watched them, a coldness that she couldn't ignore. One night, while they were having dinner with the family, Rick appeared without warning. His serious expression and calculating gaze made everyone feel uncomfortable. "James, we need to talk." "Alone," said Rick, with an authority that he had not lost. James, although suspicious, decided to follow his father outside the house. Natalia stayed inside her intuition telling her that something wasn't right. "Dad, what is so urgent that you can't say it in front of my family?" James asked, crossing his arms. "I've been watching you, James. I thought you could change, that you could go back to being the son I always wanted. But you've sunk deeper into this mistake," Rick said, his voice full of contempt. "Mistake? Do you mean my family?" James responded, feeling how anger began to boil inside him. "Yes, your family. That bastard child and that woman are not suitable for you. They have ruined you. They have made you weak." "I can't let them destroy what I've built," Rick snapped, his gaze cold as ice. James felt a chill run through his body. For the first time, he understood the true extent of his father's manipulation of him. Rick had never wanted to reconcile. He had just been waiting for the right moment to destroy what James had built with Natalia and Trevor. "I can't believe you still think like that. I have strived to redeem myself, to build something real and authentic. And you just want to destroy it," James said, his voice trembling but firm. "You will never be anything without me, James. And if you can't see that, then I'll have to act," Rick said, his voice dripping with venom. Before James could respond, Rick pushed him hard against the wall. Natalia, who had been watching from the window, ran out of the house with Trevor behind her. "Leave him alone," Natalia shouted, putting herself between James and Rick. Rick looked at Natalia with deep hatred. "You girl, you are the reason for all this. You have ruined my son and I can't allow it anymore," said Rick, taking a small flask out of his pocket. James, stunned by the blow, tried to get up. "Dad, don't do this. You've done enough damage," James pleaded. But Rick was determined. He opened the jar and poured its contents onto the ground, releasing a toxic smoke that quickly began to fill the air. "Everyone inside!" James shouted, pushing Natalia and Trevor towards the house and closing the door. The smoke quickly cleared outside, but the fear remained inside. Rick slammed the door angrily. "This is not over, James. You will never be safe with them," Rick shouted before leaving. James, Natalia, and Trevor stood hugging each other in the room, trembling from the intensity of the confrontation. They knew that Rick would stop at nothing to separate them. The next morning, Paul decided that they could no longer live in fear. He went to the police and told them everything about Rick's threats and attack. The authorities, seeing the seriousness of the situation, took immediate measures to protect the family. Meanwhile, Rick, in desperation, tried to use his influence to avoid the consequences. However, the evidence was overwhelming, and his former allies began to distance themselves from him. In a twist of fate, the community which had witnessed James and Natalia's struggles came together to support them. They organized vigils and meetings to guarantee their safety and show their solidarity. Finally, the authorities managed to arrest Rick, who was put on trial for his crimes. The judicial process was long and painful, but in the end, justice prevailed. Rick was sentenced to a long prison sentence, and the threat he represented faded. With peace finally achieved, James, Natalia, and Trevor were able to begin rebuilding their lives without fear. The community welcomed them with open arms, and with each passing day, their love and strength grew stronger. During a celebration in the local park where friends and neighbors gathered to honor his bravery, James spoke. "Thanks to everyone for your support. We have gone through very difficult times, but thanks to your love and solidarity, we have moved forward. I am determined to be the best father and partner I can be. Our future is full of hope, and together nothing can stop us," he said, with a smile full of gratitude and determination. The crowd applauded enthusiastically, and Natalia, standing next to James, looked at him with pride and love. Trevor, with his contagious joy, ran towards his parents, holding a drawing he had made. The drawing showed his family happy and united, with a bright sun in the sky. For James and Natalia, it was a yes. Palpable enchant. Natalia, although willing to give him a chance, had never let go of her distrust. There was something in the way Rick watched them, a coldness that she couldn't ignore. One night, while they were having dinner with the family, Rick appeared without warning. His serious expression and calculating gaze made everyone feel uncomfortable. "James, we need to talk. "Alone," said Rick with an authority that he had not lost. James, although suspicious, decided to follow his father outside the house. Natalia stayed inside her intuition telling her that something wasn't right. "Dad, what is so urgent that you can't say it in front of my family?" James asked, crossing his arms. "I've been watching you, James. I thought you could change, that you could go back to being the son I always wanted. But you've sunk deeper into this mistake," Rick said, his voice full of contempt. "Mistake? Do you mean my family?" James responded, feeling how anger began to boil inside him. "Yes, your family. That bastard child and that woman are not suitable for you. They have ruined you. They have made you weak. I can't let them destroy what I've built," Rick snapped, his gaze cold as ice. James felt a chill run through his body. For the first time, he understood the true extent of his father's manipulation of him. Rick had never wanted to reconcile. He had just been waiting for the right moment to destroy what James had built with Natalia and Trevor. "I can't believe you still think like that. I have strived to redeem myself, to build something real and authentic. And you just want to destroy it," James said, his voice trembling but firm. "You will never be anything without me, James. And if you can't see that, then I'll have to act," Rick said, his voice dripping with venom. Before James could respond, Rick pushed him hard against the wall. Natalia, who had been watching from the window, ran out of the house with Trevor behind her. "Leave him alone," Natalia shouted, putting herself between James and Rick. Rick looked at Natalia with deep hatred. "You girl, you are the reason for all this. You have ruined my son, and I can't allow it anymore," said Rick, taking a small flask out of his pocket. James, stunned by the blow, tried to get up. "Dad, don't do this!" "You've done enough damage," James pleaded. But Rick was determined. He opened the jar and poured its contents onto the ground, releasing a toxic smoke that quickly began to fill the air. "Everyone inside!" James shouted, pushing Natalia and Trevor towards the house and closing the door. The smoke quickly cleared outside, but the fear remained inside. Rick slammed the door angrily. "This is not over, James. You will never be safe with them," Rick shouted before leaving. James, Natalia, and Trevor stood hugging each other in the room, trembling from the intensity of the confrontation. They knew that Rick would stop at nothing to separate them. The next morning, Paul decided that they could no longer live in fear. He went to the police and told them everything about Rick's threats and attack. The authorities, seeing the seriousness of the situation, took immediate measures to protect the family. Meanwhile, Rick, in desperation, tried to use his influence to avoid the consequences. However, the evidence was overwhelming, and his former allies began to distance themselves from him. In a twist of fate, the community, which had witnessed James and Natalia's struggles, came together to support them. They organized vigils and meetings to guarantee their safety and show their solidarity. Finally, the authorities managed to arrest Rick, who was put on trial for his crimes. The judicial process was long and painful, but in the end, justice prevailed. Rick was sentenced to a long prison sentence, and the threat he represented faded. With peace finally achieved, James, Natalia, and Trevor were able to begin rebuilding their lives without fear. The community welcomed them with open arms, and with each passing day, their love and strength grew stronger. During a celebration in the local park where friends and neighbors gathered to honor his bravery, James spoke. "Thanks to everyone for your support. We have gone through very difficult times, but thanks to your love and solidarity, we have moved forward. I am determined to be the best father and partner I can be. Our future is full of hope, and together nothing can stop us," he said, with a smile full of gratitude and determination. The crowd applauded enthusiastically, and Natalia, standing next to James, looked at him with pride and love. Trevor, with his contagious joy, ran towards his parents, holding a drawing he had made. The drawing showed his family happy and united with a bright sun in the sky. For James and Natalia, it was a perfect symbol of your new life, full of promise and possibilities. As the sun set on the horizon, the Johnson family hugged each other, feeling a peace they had not known in a long time. Although the road had been long and full of challenges, they had found redemption and the true love that would unite them forever. With Rick behind bars and the threat finally neutralized, James, Natalia, and Trevor found themselves in a transition phase. Although peace had come to their lives, the emotional scars of the past few years were deep. Each family member carried psychological wounds that needed attention and healing. One afternoon, while Trevor played in the yard, James and Natalia sat in the living room, surrounded by silence that offered an opportunity to reflect. "Natalia, I can't stop thinking about everything that has happened. I feel like we've barely had time to process what we've experienced," James said, his voice heavy with concern. Natalia, looking towards the window, nodded slowly. "Yes, it has been an emotional roller coaster. I think we've been so focused on surviving that we haven't had time to really feel and heal," she responded with a sigh. James took his hand, feeling the need to connect on a deeper level. "I've been thinking about seeking professional help, therapy for us and for Trevor. I think we need a safe space to talk about our emotions and start healing," James suggested, with a hopeful look. Natalia looked at him, gratitude in her eyes. "I think it's a great idea, James. We have been through a lot, and it is important that we address our wounds, not only for us, but also for Trevor. He needs to know that we are okay and that we are working together to be a strong and loving family," he responded, squeezing her hand tightly. They decided to look for a family therapist, someone who could guide them on this path of healing. The first sessions were difficult, full of tears and painful memories. James spoke about the guilt he felt for having been manipulated and having left Natalia at the time when he needed him most. The sessions allowed him to explore his relationship with his father and understand how Rick's expectations and manipulations had profoundly affected his self-esteem and his decisions. "I have always wanted to be my own person, but I lived in constant fear of disappointing my father. His control over me was absolute, and it took me a long time to realize that he was living his life, not mine," James confessed during a session. The therapist, with a calm voice, responded, "James, it is important to recognize that your father's influence was toxic, but it's also crucial that you forgive yourself. Recognizing the power he had over you is the first step toward liberation and building your own identity." Natalia, for her part, explored the impact of betrayal and the constant struggle to keep her son safe and happy. "I have had to be strong for Trevor, but sometimes I feel that strength has left me without space for my own fears and pain." "I've always been in survival mode," Natalia said, with tears in her eyes. The therapist nodded empathetically. "Natalia, your resilience is admirable, but you also need space to feel and heal. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. It is in that vulnerability where you will find the strength to move forward more fully." Trevor also had his own sessions, adapted to his age. Through games and creative activities, the therapist helped him express his feelings and understand that, although the world may be an uncertain place, he would always have the love and protection of his parents. "Trevor, can you draw me how you feel when you are with Mum and Dad?" the therapist asked during a session. Trevor, with serious concentration, drew a large house with a garden full of flowers and a bright sun in the sky. In the center of the drawing, he was holding his parents' hands. "I feel happy and safe when we are together," said Trevor with a shy smile. These sessions began to bring a new understanding and closeness between James and Natalia. They learned to communicate more openly and honestly, without fear of being judged. Therapy gave them tools to manage conflict in a healthy way and to support each other in their moments of vulnerability. One day, after a particularly emotional session, James and Natalia sat in the garden while Trevor played nearby. The sun was beginning to set, coloring the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Natalia, I want to thank you for never giving up, neither on me nor on our family. You are the strongest person I know, and every day you inspire me to be better," James said, with a voice full of emotion. Natalia, with shining eyes, looked at him tenderly. "And you, James, have shown me that true love always finds its way. Together we have overcome the unimaginable, and I know we can face anything that comes." "I'm proud of us and the family we've created," she responded, approaching to hug him. That hug under the colorful sky symbolized a new beginning. Although the road to healing was long, James and Natalia knew that they were closer than ever. Her wounds, although deep, were a testament to her strength and unwavering love. As they watched Trevor play happily in the garden, they felt a deep peace. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. And in that moment, they understood that together, they could overcome anything. The healing process for Jamis, Natalia, and Trevor had begun, but life never stops presenting new challenges. Although Rick was behind bars, the legacy of his actions was still present in the family's life. However, with each therapy session and each moment of mutual support, they felt like they were moving forward. One afternoon, while the family was enjoying a day in the park, James received an unexpected call from an old family friend, John. His tone was urgent and concerned. "James, I need to see you. There is something you should know about your father and the things he did before he was arrested," John said, without giving more details. James, intrigued and a little anxious, agreed to meet with John that same night. Natalia, seeing the concern on James's face, encouraged him to reach out and find out what her friend had to say. "Go, James. It's important that we know everything we can about what your father did." "There may be things we haven't discovered yet," Natalia said, holding her hand tightly. James arrived at the cafe where he had met John and found him sitting at a table in the corner with a serious expression. After the initial greetings, John got straight to the point. "James, there is something you should know. Before your father was arrested, he made financial and legal arrangements that could affect your life and the lives of your family. I found some documents showing suspicious property transfers and manipulations. It seems like he was trying to make sure that, even from prison, he could continue to control certain aspects of your life," John explained, handing her a folder full of papers. James felt a knot in his stomach as he reviewed the documents. The evidence of his father's machinations was overwhelming. "This is incredible. I thought we had seen the worst, but this shows that his reach was much greater than we imagined," James said, his voice shaking with anger and frustration. John nodded, understanding the magnitude of the discovery. "James, we need to act quickly. You should review these documents with an attorney and take steps to protect your assets and those of your family. We cannot allow Rick to continue interfering in your life from prison," said John, with determination. That night, James returned home and told Natalia everything. Together, they decided to contact a lawyer specializing in financial crimes. They knew this meant more legal battles, but they were determined to face whatever came their way. The following days were intense and exhausting. James and Natalia spent hours reviewing documents with their lawyer, unraveling the complex webs of manipulation that Rick had woven. They discovered that he had diverted funds, created shell companies, and transferred properties to false names. "It's amazing how far he went to maintain control, but this also shows how desperate he was not to lose his power over you," the lawyer said, as he explained to them the legal strategies they could follow. Meanwhile, the community continued to show its support. Friends and neighbors offered to help with Trevor and anything else they needed. Everyone's solidarity was a constant reminder that they were not alone in this fight. One day, while they were reviewing some documents, Natalia found a letter hidden among the papers. The letter was addressed to Paul and appeared to have been written by his mother, who had died when he was young. The letter revealed truths about Rick that James had never known. "James, this letter is from your mother. You should read it," Natalia said, handing him her envelope carefully. Paul opened the letter with trembling hands and began to read aloud. "My dear James, if you are reading this, it means that circumstances have led you to discover the true nature of your father. I always knew that Rick had a dark side, but I could never completely protect you from him. I want you to know that I have always loved you, and that I am proud of the man you have become. Never let his shadow darken your light. Keep going with strength and love," he read, with tears in his eyes. The letter was a painful revelation, but also liberating. James realized that, despite his father's actions, he had always had the love and support of his mother. "Natalia, this changes everything. Knowing that my mother knew and still believed in me gives me a strength that I never thought I would have," he said. James hugging Natalia tightly. With renewed determination, James and Natalia decided to move forward with the legal actions necessary to undo the damage caused by Rick. Every day was a fight, but also one more step towards freedom and justice. Finally, after weeks of hard work and unconditional support, they managed to nullify Rick's financial manipulations and protect his assets. The victory was an immense relief, but also a confirmation that love and truth always prevail. On a sunny afternoon, James, Natalia, and Trevor met in the park, enjoying the tranquility they had longed for. While Trevor played, James and Natalia reflected on everything they had been through. "We have overcome so much, Natalia. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that we've come this far," James said with a smile. "And we have done it together, James. Each challenge has made us stronger. I know we still have a way to go, but with the love and support we have, we can overcome anything," Natalia responded, hugging him. The future, although uncertain, looked brighter and full of possibilities. James, Natalia, and Trevor knew that, no matter what came, they were prepared to face it together. Life had taught them that true power lies not in control and manipulation, but in love, truth, and resilience. With the legal conflict finally resolved and Rick's machinations dismantled, James, Natalia, and Trevor's lives began to regain a sense of normality. However, the process had left deep scars on their hearts, and they knew there was still work to be done to fully heal. One morning, while the family was enjoying breakfast, James received a call from the detective who had handled Rick's case. "Mr. Johnson, I wanted to inform you that we have found more evidence related to his father. It seems that there are more people involved in his illicit activities, and we are expanding the investigation," the detective said. Paul, although surprised, was not overwhelmed by the news. He had faced so much that now he felt more prepared for any challenge that presented itself. "Thank you for informing me, Detective. Keep me up to date with any news," James responded, with a firm voice. When he hung up, he looked at Natalia and Trevor, who were looking at him with curiosity. "It seems that my father's story is not over yet, but I'm ready to face whatever comes, and I know that together we can overcome anything," James said, smiling with determination. That afternoon, while Trevor was playing in the garden, James and Natalia decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. They walked hand in hand, enjoying the fresh air and tranquility they could finally taste. "James, I've been thinking a lot about everything we've been through. We have faced so much pain and betrayal, but we have also found incredible strength in our love and the community around us," Natalia said, her tone reflective. "You're right, Natalia. Sometimes it seems incredible to me that we have come this far. But each challenge has made us stronger and more united." "I wouldn't change anything about what we have now," James responded, squeezing his hand. As they walked, they met several neighbors who greeted them warmly. Community solidarity and support had been a fundamental pillar for them during the darkest moments. A few days later, James received an invitation to speak at a community meeting about his experience and the lessons learned from him. Although he was hesitant at first, Natalia encouraged him to accept. "James, your story can inspire others who are going through difficult situations. You have a powerful voice and a story of resilience and love that deserves to be heard," said Natalia, with an encouraging smile. On the day of the meeting, the community center was full of people. Friends, neighbors, and strangers had gathered to listen to James. When he went on stage, he felt a mix of nerves and gratitude. Natalia and Trevor watched him from the front row, his presence giving them strength. "Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for being here today. My family and I have been through incredibly difficult times, but thanks to the love and support of this community, we have found the strength to move forward," James began, his voice echoing through the room. "Life gives us tests that sometimes seem insurmountable, but I have learned that true power lies not in control or manipulation, but in truth, love, and resilience. My father tried to control my life in many ways, and although his actions caused us a lot of pain, they also taught us to fight for what is just and true," he continued, with emotion in his voice. The audience listened attentively, many of them with tears in their eyes. "Today I am here to tell you that, no matter how dark the times we face, there is always hope. We find strength in ourselves and those around us. Never underestimate the power of love and truth. They are our light in the darkness," she concluded as the audience burst into applause. After his speech, many people approached Paul to thank him and share their own stories. It was a moment of deep and healing connection for everyone. That night back home, James felt lighter. He had shared his truth and in the process had found a new dimension of peace. "I'm very proud of you, James. You spoke from the heart and touched many people today," Natalia said, hugging him. "Thank you, Natalia. I couldn't have done it without you and Trevor." "You are my strength and my inspiration," James responded, kissing her tenderly. The following days were of calm and reconstruction. The family focused on enjoying the small moments. Dinners together, Trevor's laughter, walks in the park. Every day was a gift, and they knew it. One weekend, they decided to take a trip to the nearby mountains. It was an opportunity to disconnect and enjoy nature. As they walked along the paths, surrounded by trees and the sound of birds, they felt a deep connection with the world and with each other. At the top of the mountain, they stopped to admire the view. The sun was setting, painting the sky in vibrant colors. James, Natalia, and Trevor sat together, enjoying the moment. "We've come so far and we still have a long way to go, but as long as we are together, I know we can face anything," James said, looking at the horizon. "That's right, James. Our love and our truth are stronger than any obstacle, and we will always find a way to move forward," Natalia responded, with a serene smile. Trevor, oblivious to the depth of his parents' conversation, snuggled between them, feeling safe and loved. In that moment, under the starry sky, James, Natalia, and Trevor knew that they had found something more than peace. They had found a reason to keep fighting, a reason to believe in a bright future. Together they had overcome the unimaginable, and together they would build a new chapter full of love, hope, and kept promises. After long, arduous months of legal battles, family conflicts, and deep emotional reflections, James finally felt that he could begin to rebuild his life. The sense of peace he had been seeking for so long was beginning to settle in his heart, and with it a clarity about his past and the impact of the racism that had shaped his life. One sunny morning, as James was preparing breakfast for his family, he felt a surge of gratitude. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, and the sound of Trevor laughing with Natalia in the living room gave him a feeling of home and belonging that he had never felt before. After breakfast, James decided to take his family to a special place, the park where he and Natalia used to walk when they started their relationship. It was a place full of beautiful and painful memories, but above all a place where everything had begun. As they walked through the park, Trevor ran towards a group of children playing ball. James and Natalia sat on a nearby bench, watching their son with a smile. "This place brings back so many memories for me. We've been through a lot, but we've also grown so much," James said, looking at Natalia. "Yes, it is incredible to think about everything we have overcome, but the most important thing is that we are here, together, stronger than ever," Natalia responded, taking James's hand. James took a deep breath and felt the need to talk about something that had been weighing on his mind. "Natalia, there is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Throughout my life, racism has been a constant shadow. My father taught me to see the world in a distorted way, to value people based on their skin color and social status. But you and Trevor have shown me that there is another way of seeing the world, a way based on love and equality," James said, sincerely. Natalia listened attentively, her eyes reflecting understanding and support. "James, we all carry scars from our pasts. The important thing is to recognize these wounds and work to heal them. You have taken enormous steps to change and to be a better person. I'm proud of you for facing your own prejudices and fighting against them," Natalia responded, squeezing her hand tightly. James nodded, feeling a wave of emotion. "I want Trevor to grow up in a world where he doesn't have to face the same prejudices as us. I want him to know that he is loved and valued for who he is, not because of the color of his skin. And I want to do everything in my power to educate others and fight racism so that other children don't have to face what we face," James said, with renewed determination. Natalia smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That is a noble goal, James, and I know that together we can make a difference. We have learned so much from our experiences, and now is our time to share those lessons with the world," she responded, her voice full of hope. They decided to become actively involved in their community, participating in educational initiatives and awareness programs about racism and equality. James began giving talks at schools and community centers, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned. Every time he spoke, he felt that he was making a difference, not only in his own life, but in the lives of others as well. One afternoon, while giving a talk at a local school, James saw a group of students from different backgrounds listening attentively to him. He spoke about the importance of valuing people for their character and not their appearance, and how love and understanding can overcome hatred and prejudice. Racism is a disease that affects us all, but it is also something we can cure. Each of us has the power to make a change, to educate others, and to fight for a more just and equitable world. Never underestimate the impact you can have, James said, looking at the students with a smile. After the talk, several students came up to thank him and share their own experiences. It was a moment of deep connection and a confirmation that he was on the right path. That night back home, James felt lighter than ever. He sat on the porch with Natalia, enjoying the silence and peace of the night. Today was a good day. I feel like we are making a difference, even if it is small, said James, looking at the stars. We are, James. Every little action counts. And I am proud of you for everything you have done and for everything you continue to do, Natalia responded, resting her head on James's shoulder. James hugged Natalia, feeling deep gratitude for the life they had built together. He knew there would still be challenges, but he also knew that with the love and support of his family, he could face them. As time passed, James, Natalia, and Trevor continued to grow and learn together. Their home became a haven of love and acceptance, a place where differences were celebrated and each individual was valued for who they were. James had found his purpose, to fight for a better world for his son and for all children, and on that journey, he had discovered the true essence of love and humanity. Life had taught them that no matter how dark the times, there is always hope. And as James reflected on his past and looked toward the future, he knew that he was exactly where he needed to be, surrounded by love and ready to face whatever came with an open heart and a clear mind. It was a calm afternoon, and the sky was painted shades of orange and pink by the setting sun. James, Natalia, and Trevor met in the garden of their home, enjoying an outdoor dinner. The atmosphere was relaxed and full of warmth, reflecting the love and unity they had built as a family. As they finished dinner, Natalia looked at James and smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said, with a mixture of nostalgia and satisfaction in her voice. James nodded, taking Natalia's hand. "Yes, we have. And each step has been a lesson, an opportunity to grow and understand more about ourselves and the world around us," he responded with a thoughtful look. Trevor, who was busy drawing in his notebook, looked up and looked at them curiously. "Mom, Dad, why do you always talk about everything that happened?" he asked with the innocence of a child. Natalia leaned towards him, stroking her hair. "Because, honey, it's important to remember where we come from and everything we've learned. It helps us appreciate what we have and be stronger for the future," she explained tenderly. James took a deep breath and decided to share his final thoughts with his family, hoping that his reflection could also reach others who might need it. "Trevor, when I was young, I let the expectations and prejudices of others dictate who he should be. I lived for a long time in my father's shadow, trying to do what he wanted instead of following my own path. It was a mistake that cost me a lot," James began, his voice firm but soft. Trevor listened attentively, his eyes large and curious. "But I have learned that the most important thing in life is to be true to yourself. It doesn't matter what others expect of you. What really matters is what you choose to be. You must follow your heart, your dreams, and your values." "Even when it is difficult," James continued, looking at his son with love. Natalia nodded, supporting James's words. "Yes, Trevor, life will present us with many challenges, and sometimes people will try to tell us who we should be or what we should do. But you have the strength and freedom to choose your own path. Always remember that you are valuable just the way you are, and never let anyone make you feel otherwise," she added with an encouraging smile. James looked at Natalia and then at the sky, remembering all the moments of pain, struggle, and redemption they had experienced. "Our journey has been difficult, but it has also been incredibly valuable. We have learned that love and truth are our greatest strengths. We have seen that by facing our fears and being honest with ourselves, we can overcome any obstacle," he said with a reflective look. Natalia took James's hand, feeling a deep connection in that moment. "And beyond everything, we have learned that life is a gift. Every day is an opportunity to grow, love, and make a difference. No matter how dark the times are, there is always a light within us that can shine and guide our path, she added, with a voice full of hope. Trevor smiled and returned to his drawing, now with a new understanding and appreciation for his parents' words. The rest of the night, the family enjoyed each other's company, sharing laughter and stories under the starry sky. They knew that although the future was uncertain, they were prepared to face it together, with love and determination. In real life, each person faces their own battles and challenges. The story of James, Natalia, and Trevor is a reminder that, no matter the circumstances, we always have the power to choose who we want to be. We can let the expectations of others dictate our path, or we can be brave and follow our own hearts. True freedom and happiness come from being true to ourselves, embracing our imperfections, and fighting for what we believe in. At the end of the day, what really matters is living a life that reflects our values and dreams, surrounded by those who love and support us. And so, with hearts full of love and hope, James, Natalia, and Trevor continued their journey, knowing that together they could face anything. Her story is a tribute to the power of love, truth, and resilience, and an inspiration to all those seeking to be truly free and happy. Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey with James, Natalia, and Trevor. If you liked this story of love, redemption, and the fight against prejudice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell for more content. See you in the next video. See you soon.